Listeners be advised. The Soliloquy podcast discuss matters related to the human experience and many that are sexual in nature. Due to this, some conversations may surround triggering topics such as sexual violence, self-harm, abuse, and much more. Please be advised, a list of crisis and psychological resources will be available in the show notes of this episode. With that said, let's get started with the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention please as we go through the following safety instructions.
In the event that there is a loss of cabin pressure, oxygen mask will drop from the overhead. Place the mask over your nose and mouth. Breathe normally as oxygen is flowing even if the mask is not in. Be sure to adjust your own mask before helping others.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Soliloquy podcast, where we step out and speak on sexuality. This is your favorite host, Vernon T. Scott, also known as Slaytor Jackson, and for you freaky motherfuckers out there, Sebastian Adams. On today's episode, we're going shopping and looking at labels and talking about labels and stuff like that. And with me, I have Tyrell. How are you doing, good sir?
Hello. I am doing good. Hoping everybody's doing well.
I don't know. I need to look and see exactly when this episode is coming out. I think this is after the mid-season break, so I'm just going to act as though it is because look, I'm sorry, y'all. It's January and I've been busy like working in terms of like podcasting. So I have a lot of episodes right now, and these episodes are already like pushing towards August. So I don't know if I should be talking about November in all these episodes going forward, or if I should just be like, acting as though it's closer to
Well,
whenever this release.
well, look, you could just put it in like a special note section, be like reference here.
Right? Like
Reference here.
something's coming your way.
Exactly.
There might be an announcement, there might not be an announcement. Who knows? Oh God. But look, I love it though. I love it. This to me, this means that it's going to be a relaxed podcasting year.
Yes.
So I always love that. I love it when I'm relaxed. I love it when my guests are relaxed. I love it when everyone's relaxed and just being them and being free. And I double checked. We could talk about November. Yes.
Listen, because I know y'all enjoyed the whole Bimba that came around the first time, so you know.
Look, and if you have not listened to those episodes, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you not catching up on the show?
Exactly.
It's
Look,
August,
subscribe, go
possible,
watch those episodes.
right?
Like,
See, I'm not even going to remember that. I just said it's August, so it's not August, y'all. When this episode comes out, it's October. No, it's September. Uh, it's some month. I'm sorry, y'all. Evergreen content is better. I love those people who are able to do the quick reactions and the hot takes and pop culture things and what's going on now. I love those people so much, but it takes a lot of work to edit episodes, make sure you have the right guests to talk about these things. And I don't got that much time on my hands. I got time on my hands, but not that
exactly.
much. The time I do have is for self-care because self-care is great.
Yes. Exactly.
But I did say that we are going to talk about labels today. So let's go ahead and get into that conversation. What do labels mean to you?
Hmm. Labels. So for me, I think that it's always been like a push and pull with labels. I think personally for me, and then I think just seeing about how other people, treat labels. I think that labels in a lot of ways are good because I think innately as people, we like labels because we like to have something we can identify with.
Hmm.
It's how we, make sense of the world. So even just the label of just, hey, this is mother, this is father, this is so and so, this is that, So of course we have those general labels as well. I think that the complication becomes is that when we're trying to understand our intersex of
Mm.
labels. So it's like to say, okay, what does it mean for me to be a male, a self-identifying male? What does it mean for me to be a black male?
Hmm.
So adding the nature of my ethnicity, my background onto that, then adding the next label of what does it mean for me to be a uh, black same gender loving male,
Hmm.
right? And then so as you're getting into all these labels that you have, you're starting to understand your kind of position, kind of with who you are in the world. And how does that actually show up for you? The reason why I think labels are that the reason why they become so complicated and why you hear a lot of pushback with labels is because when you try to circumvent your labels onto other people,
Mm.
that is where it becomes a problem, because just because you may identify as one thing or aspect doesn't mean the next person does. And so I think that you can identify differently, and even if you do have labels that are the same, just
Mm.
know that even though you may have this same label, this another person may be on a different spectrum of that label than you are,
Mm.
you know. So just being open to the nature of just different narratives with inside those labels is key and it's pertinent.
And I say my issue with labels is like when you earlier when you said identifier, like I do see them as a good way to identify things, but I don't see them as being a representation of identity,
Mm,
meaning that like whenever the way that we use labels now is to restrict and put things in a box,
mm,
and we want everything to fit that and stay on this specific narrative rather than, oh, okay, this person identifies as bisexual, gay, heterosexual, whatever the case is, mom, dad, sister, brother, this is what they identify as, but this is not their sole identity. But what we typically do is we just put them in that box, put them in that role, put them in that position that, okay, because you are father, you have to do such and such, such and such and such and such. If you're a mother, you have to be in the kitchen, you have to do this. You're the brother, you have to be the protector, you have to make sure that you stick up for your siblings when nobody else is there, blah, 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 blah. You're the sister, you have to be there to, not protect, but, be
mhm.
the emotional guard for your siblings, blah, 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 or be better than whatever the case is. We
Exactly.
make it so that we have little to no escape in terms of our identity because of the label that we place on ourselves,
Exactly.
which to me is extremely unfair. Rather than we just say or provide, like you said, it's a spectrum. We don't give that leniency that, oh, you say you're this. That's great. So how do you express yourself? Or just acknowledge, okay, that's cool. You're bi, that's a
Mm.
part of you, and not make this entire story of who this person is because of their sexuality. Like, oh, I have gay friends. Okay, cool. I'm not your gay friend. You don't know me. Like, I love hanging out with the gays. Okay, I don't. And I might be on that
Exactly.
spectrum. I still don't. I'm joking. I do like hanging around with some gays. Not all. But like because we make it so strict, it makes me
Mm.
not want to be labeled.
Right. And then also you also have to think about, intergenerational experiences,
Mm.
because depending on who you're talking to, like I find a lot of times, even just in conversing with like older gentlemen, like I think from my conversations, I get actually more pushback from people who are actually my own age
Mm.
than I actually do from like talking to like with older gentlemen, because to me older gentlemen, like, yeah, they're kind of like set in certain ways of course, but I meet so many older gentlemen that are they're wanting to know about different labels, about different, binaries of identity, because for older gentlemen they may not have had, that level of expression, or was able to, kind of be in the know about these kind of identities. And so it's really striking to me, because you would think that, having talking to people who are your age and, who are around your experiences, of a kind of, progressive society that, we kind of are in and continuing to move into. But it's kind of like my around like I don't know, something about talking to people around my age are actually more rigid than I would have ever assumed. And it's not even necessarily asking the nature of a question. I mean, we're all inquisitive. If you don't know
Mhm.
something, of course, ask a question, but it's like the pushback. It's like, oh, like really? Like what's that? Or like, well, I'm this, or like, or just having this kind of like defensive tone. But I'm like, but you're the one that asked the question though, and you're the one that's wanting to know. So why are you getting defensive?
I get that. Like, I've had conversations with people when I'm thinking we're having an actual, healthy conversation about our differences and whatnot, and then they literally get defensive whenever something doesn't fit the same narrative that they follow. Like, I've really had experiences where people just like, well, I don't know about everybody else, but this is just how I want to be and live my life. But I'm like, nobody was saying that you have to change your life. Like,
Exactly.
it's okay for you to do whatever the hell you were doing. I'm just saying there's other perspectives out here other than your
Exactly.
own.
It's like calm down. Nobody's attacking you or what you like or what you want. So you can take a Midol, some Tylenol, and calm down.
Exactly. But like, even I think a lot of that, for what I've seen, deals with the concept of wanting to be politically correct a lot,
Mm,
which I don't really get. I understand not being offensive to other people, other communities and whatnot, but you don't have
mm.
to be a politically correct person in all spaces. Like, if you
No.
cannot be you and have a conversation, I don't want to talk to you.
Exactly. Because if you find yourself wanting to, or just having the need to be politically correct all the time, you're going to find yourself walking on eggshells all the time.
Hmm.
And something that I actually told, like a group, a Facebook group that I belong to, we were having a conversation recently about the nature of labels and sexual scripts and, things like that. And one of the things that I brought up, I was saying that instead of trying to overwhelm, it's like data when you're
Hmm.
trying to learn a completely like new system, it's like you don't have to overwhelm yourself, or overwhelm your brain trying to understand the nature of this term or this phrase or anything like that. Instead, focus on the nature of the person that you're getting to know or the person that you're talking to. How is this term or this label, representative or is a reality for them? And that's how you come to know about labels and the way that people want to identify and not identify. It's not based on a larger kind of ideological notion. Yeah, there is that, and yes, you'll learn that over time. If you're really wanting to know, but instead focus on the person because that's who you're talking to. You're not talking to an idea. You're talking to a
Exactly.
person. So focus on that person and how that label is a truth for them in their life.
Yeah, and I think about like whenever, so it's not necessarily politically correctness, but having these conversations with people where when people learn a new word or something like that, and they
Mhm.
try to act like this is something that's regularly in their vernacular, or they act as though that they've been on this wave for such a long time, rather than just acknowledging that, okay, this is something that's new to me.
Mhm.
Um, and they just go so heavy with it. That shit
Right.
annoys me. And on top of that is when we do label people, we don't even take in consideration about what is the experience, like you were saying, the experiences of other people, what they've gone through, or who they are as a person or a community. Like,
Yeah.
I think often about that Latinx thing, and
Oh,
learning that,
person.
oh, well, people from the Hispanic communities as well as on a global and broader scale, it's just like, what the fuck is a Latinx? Like, if you're going to do anything, like to try to make something gender neutral, one, nobody asked for this. Two, at least make it within the rules of the language itself and not just add an X just because you feel like it's something that you have the power to do. And rather than just coming as a group and having these conversations with people of this background, of this heritage, of this language, and just saying, hey, is there anything that is gender neutral in terms of how we all express ourselves? And they will learn, oh, if you say Latinos, that is definitely inclusive of
Right.
everybody. It's not
And
just men. The Soliloquy podcast focuses on the variability of sexual expression. When it comes to sexual expression, we often depend on pornography to illustrate how one must perform sexually. For those who have not learned this by now, the stuff you see in porn is not real. Pornography provides a singular perspective of sexual expression that is not often the reality we see during our own sexual encounters. The Soliloquy podcast is a conversation that takes you outside of the compressed box of what many know about sex. Some of the topics we discuss includes kinks, condom usage, status disclosure, and past sexual experiences. The Soliloquy podcast steps out on sexual norms and recognizes that the norm is not the only normal. Subscribe today and join the conversation. And they will learn, oh, if you say Latinos, that is definitely inclusive of everybody. It's not just men.
And that's the thing, like, because it's interesting that you brought that up, because I was seeing that article that was posted recently about like how a lot of people do not subscribe to the term Latinx and things like that. And for the class that I teach in English composition, I do cover Latino and Hispanic, a lesson in history. And what I will do is that as I'm phrasing it, I will say, for like the nature of the discussion, Latino, Latina, and or Latinx. And it's just as a kind of sign of respect, as to say like, hey, for anybody that does, identify as Latinx, because of the fact it is supposed to be a gender neutral or non-binary, kind of term, I'm not dismissing the nature of, saying like Latino or Latina or, what have you, but, just even trying to be more inclusive, as to say like, hey, I'm not saying, I can't, go through the entire branch of everything that is of Spanish culture, of course, but I can say that, because of the fact that this is a kind of tricky area where you don't know, necessarily what may or may not offend people. Not that that's what you're primarily concerned with, but because of the fact that I don't know, I rather just, hey, instead of just saying discussion of Latino history, or discussion of Latina history, I'll say Hispanic, Latino, Latina, and Latinx history, or something that feels a little bit more, feels that it's a little bit more inclusive without it having to be overexerted.
I get that. And I would say that approach is, like you said, inclusive, and it's a showing of acknowledgement of the culture itself, as well as utilizing the newer lingo that I must say is westernized lingo. And it does give that, sense of, hey, I'm doing my best to respect everybody in their boundaries. So I definitely get that. I truly get that. But I've experienced this, the online people where there's comments of people saying, oh no, you're supposed to say this, you're supposed to say that in terms of, Latinx. And I'm like, but you have individuals of this background that you're telling them that they need to do this, and they're telling you, no, I don't like that. I'm not comfortable with that. I don't want that label. This is not who we are. This is not of me. And it's just being able to respect that within those situations, um, of like, okay, I do apologize. You are of this culture. I may not be. So okay, let me bow down to that and respect that, and not push that onto you. And like your approach, on the other hand, is a lot more, we're using it all. Regardless of where you're from. If you over here and you trying to be PC, you're within that. I'm not telling you that you have to do that. I'm just saying I'm wanting to include that just in case if you do identify that. So
Yeah,
it's a
and
different
then
approach.
yeah, and then it's kind of like I get the argument also, but I also don't. I guess for me, and maybe it's my ignorance as well. I don't necessarily understand the entirety of the pushback against the nature of the term Latinx, because I'm like, if for a group of people, if there is a history of just being called Latinos, should we say, but now there is a kind of identifier for people who may have different gender various gender identities, or be a non-binary term. My thing is like, okay, if you don't associate with it, then that's fine. Like
Hmm.
it's not to say like it's supposed to be like an impediment, or some type of infiltration to history or anything like that.
Hmm.
So if this is what makes some group of people in the Latin community feel more seen or visible and accepted, then I'm like, what's wrong with that? It's not to take anything away from you, but I don't know.
I think the approach is because it's from who is doing it, because it's
Mm,
not of the community, it is of
okay.
Western
Okay.
civilization or Western thought. That is the
Mm,
thing that's offensive to a lot of the people. Like, you remember, did you see that book that came out about trap queens?
okay. I heard it. I didn't read it.
So it was a book written by a white woman that's saying that she's studying the epidemic or whatever the case is
Right,
of the
right.
trap queen, and
Mm,
did a case study kind of thing, and it was very cringe. But in terms
right,
of what a trap queen is, what they represent, and all this other stuff, and pretty much was using lyrics from the song to identify what a trap queen is supposed to be. That's essentially what a lot of, I would say, academics do when it comes to that term Latinx. Like, no one told you that you have to identify as this way. Why not meet with us and we could talk about what a trap queen is, what we prefer in terms of identity, and not assume that we don't have anything that's gender neutral, essentially. Like,
right.
because,
But also something that's interesting in this talk about like labels. One of the like she's not just a child psychologist, but she's also like has a little bit background in sex therapy as well. Her YouTube channel is amazing. Her name is Nadine Thornhill, and one of the series that she does is how to talk to you like your children about reproduction, about sex and things like that. And she does it like in stages. Like, what are some of the things that you would tell like children who are like in the first grade? Like, how would you give them like an anatomy lesson? And this just came to mind with the nature of labels. What just stuck out to me, how in her context, I like really what it is that she says about um asking kids to, like, if you're having like a diagram or something, like to name body parts, or ask what parts of our body are different colors or different textures and things like that. And one of the key things she says is that even though we have to operate within labels, to not gender
mhm,
the body parts. Not all boys have penises, not all girls have a vulva, so it avoids kind of confusion down the line. So teaching children that they don't need to see genitals to associate gender identity,
mhm,
right? Children know they have genitals. All we're telling them is that they also have names. So the fact that we can show like, hey, I have two arms, but we can also show that, hey, we also have some people in the world who only have one arm or
mhm,
only one leg. So it's to also be more inclusive to people who may have disabilities.
mhm,
So it is just to say that yes, we need labels because of the fact that obviously it's how we can have identity markers, but just to make sure that we know that, hey, just because we're talking about the nature of this label, this is not just the sole script, like you said earlier. This is not the sole narrative,
mhm, mhm.
of this label. There are many other narratives that come with this label, you know.
So, speaking of soul narratives, sexual roles, let's
Mm.
dive into that. And
Okay.
when I mention sexual roles, this is going to be definitely queer focused people. So, if you're not of the community and they don't make any sense, there's a dictionary. I might define some things. I don't know. Who knows how this conversation is going to go? I don't. So, of course, these are not necessarily specific to queer people, but it is what it is. But
Mm.
you have bottoms, tops, verse. Well, actually, let's expand this. You have the woman, the man, and yeah, sexual roles. How you feel about it?
Mm. Ooh. We don't have 5 hours. We don't have no. I know I'm playing. No, sexual roles is also something that is ingrained, especially into queer communities, because it's something that will not go away. However, I will say I find the nature of speaking about sexual roles more prevalent in Black and Brown communities than I see in white communities.
Really?
And it's not to say like it doesn't happen, but I think that the toxicity
Mm.
of the way that we associate sexual roles in Black and Brown communities, we definitely need to, continue with our work.
And this always, like, whenever I hear about, how people express themselves and how it can be toxic, I always go to hegemony because of that. The
Mhm.
reason why is it's this thing that I learned during my research about how when someone assimilates themselves into the hegemonic culture or whoever, the leaders, the ones who are pushing the narrative, whenever people assimilate into the narrative of a new culture that they're, joining or they're being oppressed in, they tend to ramp it up. They tend to overproduce, or they tend to attach themselves to those narratives extra hard because they have to fight as hard just to fit in. Like, when you have those conversations about success, you have to do 10 times as harder or 2 times as harder as the mediocre person just so you can be seen. The same thing happens when people assimilate with into whatever the culture is, whatever the narrative is. And this is my hypothesis. It's not proven, or I have not found the research to prove it in this space. But I feel as though we do that, like Black and Brown people do that in order for us to fit the queer community. Because, oh, a bottom has to be this. Cool.
Mhm.
I know the role, I know the position, I'm comfortable with that. Now let me go all out so I can fit within this community and show people that I am the bottom. I'm the top-notch bottom here. Like, I can
Mhm.
do the bottom better than anybody else can be the bottom. And
Mhm.
I see that a lot, most definitely whenever I see like queer Asian men uh
Mhm.
as they participate in engage with white men in terms of how they express themselves sexually, or how they behave within, like, the gay club or something like that. Not to say that they're misbehaving or anything, but you can see it's like there's a part of me that's always asking, is this the real you? Whenever I do see people like that, or even when it comes to Black and Brown people, I've asked that same question: is this really you?
Right. And I think also a conversation that needs to be expanded is that when we're also talking about sexual roles, I think a lot of times we're just thinking about the physical act of
Mm,
sex, and we're not thinking about the intimacy part, or we're not thinking about the fantasy part of it, because there was an interesting article I was reading. I believe her name is Dr. Zana Franglo. I can't pronounce her last name, but she's a professor of human sexuality, and she was getting stories from identifying gay men who were they identify, as a bottom but hate anal sex. And so
mm,
the actual article was really interesting to read, because immediately when you think about being a bottom, you think about, oh, okay, if I'm a bottom, then I must, like to take it. I like to, have this, receive this. And what's interesting is that they were going through a list of men who were sharing their stories, and bottoming to them is not necessarily a physical
mm,
act of sex. They fantasize, maybe being the receptive partner, or being the more submissive partner, or things like that. And even though we have other labels and other identities, such as, Dom and sub and things like that, it's just really interesting to come into a place where knowing that, yeah, when you're speaking about sexual roles, yeah, you want to have the conversations about, okay, yeah, what do people like physically and things like that. But also, how do they see the embodiment of themselves in the nature of sex? And is that something uh that is flexible? Because of course we're not always the same with everybody, and I think that stimulates from, especially for uh you know same gender loving men, that comes into the question about how do we view masculinity.
Mm,
Because one of the conversations that you'll always, I think, that is very apparent always, like on dating and hookup apps, whenever you're talking with someone, let's just say for example, you have this 5'10", 6 foot tall man, muscle bound, very outwardly muscular, or some, has all these type of features. A lot of men will say that I will only bottom for a certain kind of guy. And what that is code for is that I will only bottom for a man that I feel like matches my masculinity or supersedes that.
mm,
So even though you may have, and it's not to say that that's the only case. I mean, you have a lot of masculine men that like to be dominated or penetrated by, feminine, outwardly feminine men as well. But the kind of schism that we have in dealing with the same gender is that we have to question about, okay, if me being in this role is feels emasculating in a sense.
mm,
And just to kind of put my own story out there, for the past, maybe I wouldn't say, maybe year and a half to 2 years now, I have identified as a side man. And if you do happen to be familiar with the apps of Grinder and things like that, you may notice that the nature of the side sexual identity is now posted, because there's been a lot of advocacy and campaigning for apps to include the nature of the side sexual identity. I do want to preface, and like I tell people, this is not the term is relatively new, but the concept is not. Basically, for myself, identifying as a side man is that my first go to in being sexual with someone is not penetrative sex. However, just as we're saying, labels exist on a spectrum. There are many, many side men that they do not enjoy penetrative sex, giving or receiving. However, for me personally, I'm not necessarily like that. I can enjoy the nature of giving and receiving maybe every once in a blue moon, but it's not necessarily my go-to enjoy sexual intimacy with someone. And so one of the main questions that always gets thrown out there, or excuse me, not questions, but assumptions, is that, oh, okay, well, why is it that you want to identify like as a side? Like, okay, so you're just oral then, because we do have the nature of just being an oral top, or, oral bottom, or anything like that. And so it's like, no, the reason why we have the nature of the side identity is because just because you're not necessarily into anal penetration, that doesn't necessarily mean your go-to is always oral either.
mm,
You may enjoy other sexual acts. So what I try to explain to people is that the nature of the side identity, the reason why I enjoy it is because it gets you out of the mold and stereotype of always having to identify as a top, bottom, or verse. If that's not, if that doesn't, suit how it is that you like to identify. And so many men come onto the online Facebook group that is there. And so many men share their stories about how they have been shamed in sexual encounters
mm,
because they don't enjoy what is typical gay sex, in air quotes as I'm speaking. And so many men just sharing their stories about just being shamed, about finally feeling like they are part of like a larger community now, that no, this is not odd, or this is not anything new. So, not to get off, sorry, get off on that tangent, but it is just to say, like, as we're thinking about labels, and as we're thinking about, yeah, but as we said before, there are spectrums to those
mm, mm,
labels. And just because you may identify as this, someone else may identify as that as well. it doesn't necessarily mean that it looks the same.
I agree, and I think that's something that a lot of people do have to reckon with because, like, even with myself, this is kind of tying in a little bit of sexual scripts and sexual roles. Like, I do identify as a bottom, but at the same time, you I don't when people approach me and ask me certain things like oh you trying to suck this dick, I'm like hell no, because I don't like
No.
to suck dick, and one, I
Yeah.
don't know you.
But again, that is, but again, but like, that's so important because that is just the nature of the assumption that
Mhm.
just because you may identify as being a bottom, that all of a sudden you enjoy all acts
Mhm.
that are considered submissive. And then that's even problematic because
Mhm.
what do we really consider as being dominant or submissive? If you're talking
Exactly.
about giving head to someone, who do you really believe is in control here? The person who's
Exactly.
giving or the person who's getting? And that's a whole nother conversation.
And if
But
it's burning, give it.
that's just the nature of the conversation though. It's like,
Mhm.
if I identify as this, then that automatically means that I enjoy all the subscripts that
Mhm.
come, that are assumptive to the nature of
Exactly.
this, of this role, or identification.
And like just to have it on the record, if it is Vernon giving, it's I'm the dom in that situation, just so y'all know. But like, but I say that to say because I do, when it comes to sexual expression, I do consider myself as a dominant bottom and not necessarily. I don't consider myself a power bottom because with the way that the script and label works on that side of the spectrum of things, it ain't me.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't me. That's
Exactly.
all I'm saying. No, no
Exactly.
shade to y'all. I love y'all. Continue to do what you're doing because y'all got that power. That word is for you. But I give myself that title of dominant bottom because I am a dominant person. I do have a dominant persona.
Mm,
When it comes to me being the switch as well, I know that I'm more on the dom side than I am on the submissive side.
mm.
So if you do approach me and you do want to engage in sex and things like that, we're going to have a conversation. It's nothing
Exactly.
that you're going to expect, oh, this person's just going to automatically be willing to submit to me and all this other stuff. No, motherfucker. Until my needs are met, we're not doing anything. And I don't care
Mhm.
how that affects your ego, how dumb you thought you were. I don't need you. You approach
Exactly.
me, or you wanted me, or you the one that's actually trying to come over here to fuck. So
Exactly.
I like even whenever I'm in those positions where I'm horny, I always know I could jack off and still be great. I have
Mhm.
toys, I have things. I don't necessarily need this, but I want this. There's a
Mm.
difference. Because I
Exactly.
want this, you're more than welcome to present yourself as an ideal candidate for this. But I'm not thirsty
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah, and people have to also understand where you're thinking that, oh, like your hand and toys that you use are the placeholder. Like, no, bitch, you are the placeholder. Like, don't get it twisted.
Look, you if I'm single and you're not somebody I invited on a date or anything like that, just know where you are.
And and just
I love you
know
though.
your place. Know
Look,
your place.
it's nothing, like degrade or anything like that. It's just, out of love.
Mhm.
It's to respect where we are, and let's put that label on that.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And yeah, and I just think that, like I say, when it comes to sexual roles, that I think we have to continue expanding the conversation, not just for what we think of as masculinity and femininity, but also knowing the fact that when we're talking about sex, we're not just talking about the physical acts of sex.
Mhm.
We are talking about, well, how do you actually feel emotionally? How do you actually fantasize about what it is that you about what it is that you do in an intimate act? Because a lot of times, and that comes with the nature of fantasy, there are a lot of times where you may fantasize about something that you would not actually act out in an actual sexual scenario,
Mhm.
situation. So again, we have to continue having these conversations, and don't let anyone pressure you into a specific or box sexual role. You enjoy what you enjoy. Do not let anyone tell you or try to convince you otherwise. If you do happen to change what it is that you like, that's all well and fine. We're all
Mhm.
sexual beings. We're all hear about growth and, evolution. The things that we like more than likely will change, at
Mhm.
some point in our life. So do not be afraid of that. Embrace it for all that it is. But and ultimately just respect yourself and respect others.
hmm And to add on to that, do not allow anybody else to write your narrative.
Exactly.
Like it is your story to own and tell. Like, yeah, you can have input of other people because look, conversation is conversation. What's a good book without dialogue?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's all I'm saying. Talk to these people. But that does not mean that they write your story. You still live the story that you want to live in. If they don't like the way that you express yourself and they feel the urge to shame you because of that, they don't need to be in your story. They don't need to be in any part of how you want to live your life and be happy and be successful because who are they? You are the main character of your own story.
Mm-hmm.
Stop being a NPC, a non-playable character. Also, stop being a side character in your own story.
Mm-hmm.
What's the purpose of that?
And look, my thing is like, and as we progress more and more in society, and as we, come into, because I think about, we have all these terms now. Probably in another 40 years, as I think there's going to be so many more terms out there and so many intersects of identity. It's not, it's like it's again data. It's overload, and I'm probably going to be at the age where it's like, oh, okay, my ears are open, but I'm gonna just be like, whoo, too
Look,
much for me. But it's not to say like I'm gonna have that mentality about, oh, well, why do you do this or why do you feel this? Like that's not for me.
look,
That is not for me.
I'm
And
with
there are
you.
50 million people out here in the world to be worried about what other people think about you.
Honestly, I'm at that age already. I was thinking about like I respect all the neutral pronoun people out there. I truly do. But at the same time, I'm not learning all of those. Like, just approach me and I'll just call you by your first name. I love it for you. I respect the pronouns that you choose for yourself. But there's like 18 of those motherfuckers that I cannot personally use
Yeah, I
in a
just don't
sentence
ever
on a
want to
regular
hear.
basis. I love you. I respect you and continue to fight for the ownership of your pronouns because I'm with you in that fight. Just know I'm not going to probably use it often because
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to forget.
Yeah.
It's I'm not trying
And
to
look,
learn
that
new
has
pronouns.
nothing to do about malice or disrespect. It's just look, my memory just don't work though.
Look,
My
there's
memory
enough
just
up
don't
here
work.
already. I'm not trying to learn the full 18 new list of pronouns. I thought we were done in high school and middle school and actually elementary school, which is confusing why people still act like they don't know how to fucking use pronouns today. Like
Mm,
you use them every fucking day. You use it in the same sentence that you say that you don't
exactly.
know what the fuck pronouns are. You use it.
Exactly.
But
Like no, like get it together. Get it together.
y'all just get it together. Shut the hell up before. Shut up before. Like I'm like, choke that
Mm.
hoe. Let me stop. Anyways, let's go ahead and transition over to some never have I ever, which might have some pronouns. Are they neutral or not? Okay, let me stop. Let me
Look,
stop.
once
Y'all don't cancel me. If you do, yeah, I'll be all right. Let me stop. All right. Never have I ever had sex with more than 5 people in a in a year. Okay, never have I ever. You want to come for a nigga today. Okay. Anyway, Tyrell.
I don't think no. Actually, as I think about my sexual history, I don't think I have.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if this episode's coming out before that one or after this one. I'm a
Yeah.
virgin.
Now, where
I'm
are
a
we on our
virgin.
timeline? I got to get my calendar
I
to
think I
track
was
some dates.
I think I was talking to the van and I was like, I'm a virgin. Like, so I'm a virgin, y'all. So I have not had sex with more than 5 people in a year. I surely have, y'all. Let's be real. I've definitely look the whole in I put the hoe in Hovember. I put the hoe in Hovember. I put the hoe in how to be a hoe. I'm okay with it.
Hmm. And then that's the thing, like I don't know, because that's so like subjective. That should actually be a topic. Like, How do we think about body count?
You know, let's talk about it. Look, it's we still technically still got time, so let's talk about it. Uh, I've actually told the dude I'm talking to. I actually told him that for me, I see body count as experience points, and I've always seen it as experience points. And I'm like, well, however many bodies you call is how many bodies you call. I'm cool with it. If you
Right.
got to cancel some motherfuckers off of your body count, go ahead and do that. It's
Mm.
cool. It is what it is. Because some motherfuckers need to be taken off. I did not fuck you. What do you mean? Ew. You might even be cute, but ew.
Right.
Mm-mm. I don't know you. How you feel about it?
No, same. I think, for like because of intersex of identity that I have, especially being a poly person, like obviously poly is not just obviously about sex.
Mm.
But one of the things that I also experience is the nature of compersion. So like I love to hear about, people's rendezvous and, wonderful sexual encounters. I'm like, oh, tell me more. Like,
Exactly.
like let me give two snaps for it. So I think, yeah, I really don't see the nature of body count. Now, I think if somebody was to like just tell me like not even double digits, of course, but like they body count just way up there. I mean, it's not. I'm not judging. I'm really not judging. Like, but I would be like, oh, okay, like this one
See,
goes, yeah, okay, okay.
I heard on this one random podcast I listened to, it was I think it was like being truthful. I forgot. Anyways, it might have been the Truth podcast, TROTH.
Hmm.
Um uh, um whatever that podcast was. One of the people that I only listened to one episode, y'all, so don't judge me. If you do listen to it and you don't like it, it was not I only listened to the one episode. But the episode I listened to, the man that the host was interviewing was like he has a sex addiction, ah,
Addiction.
addiction. There we go. I don't know what's going on with my brain, y'all. I'm sorry. I'm okay. But yeah, so he's addicted to sex or whatever, and he said that his body count was probably 2,000 or something. I was like, oh my god. Now, not to judge, I'm just like, how the hell do you have 2,000 people that you've had sex with? Of course, it's somebody who has money and been doing a lot of traveling and whatnot. My main thought within that is, I hope this man has been wearing protection during all this.
Right.
That's
And
my
that's
only
the
concern.
and really at the end of the day, it's really not about the body count. It's really about how important is sexual safety to you.
Mm,
What does that look like for you? Because I really think at the end of the day, how many people you've been with, everybody either has a past or doesn't. Like I automatically assume because like I just being very candid, I did not have any type of sexual experience. So I was 25. And so, having that later on into my 20s, I used to kind of have this mentality about like I didn't want to be with people who I guess like had like a high number of body count. And I think that was just coming from insecurity within me
mm,
because like, hey, I had never, been with anyone. So I'm thinking like, oh, okay, well, what happens like if I'm like not good or which is obviously subjective. Like what if I'm not good? What if they, don't find me as enjoyable as other sex partners or all these kind of things just starting into my mind, and then I had to stop to think about like those are things I'm putting on myself. Like that has nothing to do with that has nothing to do with another person. And so regardless whether the body count or what someone has done with someone else, everybody is different with everybody.
mm,
And so let's stop the falsity with the nature of, because I never understood this falsity either about staying away from like virginity. Like for some reason like virginity is equated to like being like bad in bed, when I'm like, where the hell does that narrative come from? Like it just
mm,
means that you haven't had sexual experience. Like,
mm.
so I never did get that kind of connotation, but for whatever reason, like that's a narrative that's out there. Um, and so yeah, it's just like, you are gonna be different with every sexual partner that you are with. But just know sexual health obviously is always important. And then two, do not try to psych yourself into sexual situations that you know that are not for you.
Mm.
If you know that you are not a person who does like one night stands, don't try to talk yourself into doing it because you feel like, oh, like this is a prime part of my life or it's expected of me at some point or whatever. If that's not you, then don't do it. If you know that you're not a relationship oriented person, if you can enjoy casual sex, then just be upfront about that. Like I say, there are 50 million people in the world to be tiptoeing, lying, deceiving, and doing all this that people do out here. Like, there is no reason why you can't find what you're looking for.
Exactly. Oh, it's a lot. It's a lot of people out here. Just I I really don't get the pressures that people put on. Like you said, just be responsible, sexually responsible, and whatever responsible looks like for you. And make sure that responsibility goes towards the other person too, and respectful of the other person because like I'm still on my campaign to end this documentation on medical records about risky sexual behavior for anybody who participate in homosexual sex or
Mm,
same gender loving sex. It's automatically risky sexual behavior. When look, I've had I don't want to say countless, but I don't know the number amount of sex over the years, and I can also guarantee that 99% of all of my sexual experiences included a condom.
mm,
And the only ones that did not were either one, consensual because I was within a relationship,
mm.
consensual because I gave that one person that permission,
Right.
or non-consensual. And like you cannot necessarily equate that, oh, just because this person is a certain sexual orientation, then they're automatically doing risky sexual behavior. If you're
Exactly.
not going to probe about this person's sexual history, you're not going to probe about what their protection methods are when it comes to having sex with other people, then that shouldn't be a category at all.
Exactly.
And speaking of labels, um, so would you rather?
Sure.
So, would you rather be told you were terrible at kissing or be told you were awful at oral sex?
Mm, I think, ooh, that's a tough one. Um, I think I would rather be told I was awful at oral sex. And the reason why, it's not the fact that I don't believe like you could like, just get better at kissing, but I think that for me, because of the fact like I'm a very sensual person, I love to kiss. Like that's one of like my top foreplay aspects. So are certain aspects of oral, but I think for me, it's because I don't know, oral just encompasses, I think, a lot more. So I think it's something like, yeah, I could just, hey, if it's not what somebody is looking for, hey, if we're wanting to, continue to be intimate, it's something that, just to work on.
Get that? I'm about to cheat a little bit. I I was thinking I will rather be awful at oral sex as well because
Mm,
I don't like to suck dick, so I'm okay with that. But there is more forms of oral sex, and I'm glad that you reminded me of that because anal, like you
mm,
know, are in some other cases rimming. Um, you have there's other things you could do with your mouth on the body. So I would rather be bad at kissing, be terrible
okay.
at kissing, and be great at oral sex, and add kissing somebody can be oral sex. It just depends on how you
Exactly.
fucking define it, people.
Right. Right. And when you saying that, I was thinking it because I was like, wait a minute, kissing actually is a form, is actually oral. Like,
Exactly. Kiss can be very sexual if you know what you're doing.
mm,
And apparently, Tyrell knows what he's doing.
y'all know I'm experienced out here.
Because he said he is not giving that one up.
I know.
I'm here for it. Would you like one last would you rather?
Sure.
All righty. So, would you rather have sex in bright lighting or have sex in complete darkness?
I would rather have sex in bright lighting just because when it comes to sex, I'm also a very visual person. So I like to
Mm,
see things. And in the dark. Obviously, I can't do that. So you have to feel your way around a lot more. But I like to see. I like to see.
I get that. And I am the reverse. I actually like to feel. So
Okay.
dark is great for me. Bright, I can do it, but it's just it doesn't give me a certain aesthetic. However, I do like a silhouette. So if I have like, or not even a silhouette, if I have mood lights, I might be able to wiggle a little bit of something up in there, spice up the sex a little bit and still make sure it's very sensual and touchy and all of that. And I'm still in that headspace.
Right.
But yeah, it's the darkness for me. I'm a dark child. I'm a child of night, the
Child
moon,
night. Mm.
Luna, all up in me, the crescent, all that. So yeah, on that note, thank you, Tyrell, for being on another wonderful episode. And we have November coming up too. Such a beautiful time of the year. Do you have any last words that you'd like to share with the audience?
Again, just as we've talked about sexual roles, scripts, again, just love you to no end. Never let anyone define about what your limits are, what your boundaries are. Only you can determine that. And again, there are 50 million people out here in the world to enjoy yourself with. If you don't want to enjoy any of the 50 million people, guess what? You always have yourself, and
Oh,
that is more than enough.
to add on that, sorry, I have to correct you. 7 billion. No, 11 billion.
It's 11 billion. See,
So
our
you got a
statistics
lot
and
more.
we got statistics and research up in here.
Look, you got a
So,
lot more out here that you can engage in. And the billions is a lot. Do y'all know how much you could do with 1 billion people? You could fill a planet. Mm.
mm, look, maybe we need to know. Look, we should be actually talking about like getting to a new planet because it's like Earth ain't doing it no more.
Oh, it's really not. Oh my God.
It's really not. I'm so over
Earth is so ghetto. I wonder if this is what the Martians went through. They was just like, oh, we have a great little civilization. What are they doing over there? Are they drilling oil? Did we tell
Earth.
them that they need to stop drilling oil? Oh, they selling the
Uh,
oil now? Okay, it's okay. Things are great. Why is
and
it getting
apparently,
hotter?
and apparently, nothing ain't changed in 7 billion years. So it's like they never gonna learn.
They're never gonna learn. They never gonna learn.
They never gonna learn.
I'm sorry, Martians. We took your planet for granted, and here we are. We about to end up like y'all to be red as fuck. All this kind of carbon monoxide and shit all up in our atmosphere. The dirt starts to turn red. All this other shit because what?
Honestly.
They wouldn't
Mm,
drill some oil and chop down the trees, get rid of the water, pollute the water. You know what?
mm.
Mars, y'all got how much is y'all rent? Just let me know. Is it less than $100? Because I could make some things happen. Like I just need to find me some oxygen, and I can make my way there. It might take me like how many years? Is it 10 years or 3 years to get to Mars?
Mm.
We'll find out.
We'll find out.
On that note, again, thank you so much, Tyrell. To the listeners out there, thank you all so much for listening to the Holy Liquid podcast, where we step out and speak on sexuality. And just in case no one else told you this today, you are beautiful, you are worthy of happiness and joy, you are enough and then some. You may not live up to the you may not live up to the expectations of others, but that is okay. You are only required to walk in your own shoes. May each day you live lead you towards abundance. With that said, love you all and see you next episode. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Soliloquy Podcast, where we step out and speak on sexuality. You can subscribe to the podcast through your favorite podcasting app and find us on the web at www.soliloquy.com. That's www.heauxliloquy.com. Share the podcast with your friends and join the conversation.